In 539 BC, a city that had never fallen, a city protected by walls so thick that two chariots could race side by side along their top, opened its gates without a single arrow being fired. The city was Babylon. The man outside its walls had already conquered an empire twice the size of anything the world had seen, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the mountains of Central Asia. He was not the strongest king of his age. He did not command the largest army. He did not have the richest treasury when he started. But he understood something his enemies did not, that the smartest way to win a war is to make your enemy defeat himself before the fighting even begins. Over the next going to break down 5 of the most important tactical decisions of his life, the ones that took a minor mountain kingdom and turned it into the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen. Some of them are brilliant, some are ruthless. One of them, in the end, killed him. This is the story of Cyrus the Great, the man who didn't just conquer armies, he conquered the will to resist them. Around 559 BC, Cyrus inherited a small kingdom called Anshan, tucked into the mountains of what is now southern Iran. On paper, he was a vassal, a junior partner ruling under the authority of his grandfather, Astyages, king of the much larger Median Empire, which at the time controlled most of the Iranian plateau and parts of eastern Anatolia. Persia had no navy. It had no siege engines to speak of. Its army, by the standards of the age, was unremarkable, mostly light infantry and archers, nothing like the heavier, more established Median forces. If Cyrus had simply marched north to fight Astyages head-on, historians agree he almost certainly would have lost. What Cyrus had instead was patience, a mountain kingdom's toughness, and an unusually clear-eyed understanding of how empires actually break, not from the outside, but from the inside. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, writing about a century after these events, one of Astyages' own top generals, a man named Harpagus, held a deep personal grudge against the Median king. Years earlier, Astyages had allegedly punished Harpagus in a horrifying way for failing to carry out an order regarding the infant Cyrus. Whether or not every detail of that story is literally true, ancient sources agree on the outcome. Harpagus became a secret ally of Cyrus long before any army marched. Cyrus is said to have spent years quietly building this kind of internal support, cultivating discontented nobles, promising better treatment to Median elites who would otherwise fight to defend Astyages. When war finally broke out around 550 BC, something remarkable happened. Entire Median contingents defected mid-campaign, some without striking a single blow against the Persians.
This is the first pattern we'll see again and again in Cyrus's career. He preferred to win the political battle first, so that the military battle became a formality, sometimes barely a battle at all. Astyages was captured, and rather than being executed, he was reportedly kept at Cyrus's court, a small but telling detail. Cyrus rarely burned bridges he might need later. Conquered rulers who cooperated tended to survive.
With Media absorbed into his growing empire, Cyrus's newly unified Persian-Median army turned west toward one of the wealthiest kingdoms on earth, Lydia, ruled by King Croesus, a name so associated with fabulous wealth that it survives in English today in the phrase, rich as Croesus. Lydia controlled rich trade routes and, according to tradition, was among the first kingdoms to mint standardized gold and silver coins. Its cavalry was considered the finest in Anatolia, heavily armored horsemen who had never lost a major engagement on their home terrain. Horse against horse, the Lydians fully expected to win. Cyrus knew this too, and simply refused to give them that fight. At the Battle of Thymbra, around 547 BC, Cyrus reportedly ordered his baggage camels, pack animals normally kept far behind the front lines, moved to the very front of his formation instead. It was an almost unheard of tactical choice. Horses, unfamiliar with the scent and sight of camels, panicked violently. Ancient sources describe the famed Lydian cavalry breaking formation and bolting before Persian soldiers had even fully engaged them in melee.
With his cavalry neutralized before the battle really began, Croesus withdrew to his capital, Sardis, confident in its near-impregnable position atop a supposedly unscalable cliff face. Believing a long siege was now the only threat, Croesus reportedly dismissed part of his mercenary army for the winter, a decision that would prove fatal. According to ancient accounts, a Persian soldier watched a Lydian defender climb down the unscalable cliff face one evening to retrieve a helmet he had dropped, and then climb back up the same route into the fortress. That night, Cyrus's forces used that exact path, scaling the cliff and entering Sardis from the one side nobody thought needed defending. Sardis fell within roughly 2 weeks of the siege beginning. Lydia's gold, its trade networks, and its access to the Aegean coast, and with it the Greek city-states of Ionia, now belonged to the Persian Empire.
While popular history tends to focus on Cyrus's dramatic Western conquests, some of his hardest-won campaigns took place in the east, against the fiercely independent peoples of Bactria, Sogdiana, and the nomadic tribes of the steppe beyond. Here, there were no golden cities to bribe defectors from, no unpopular kings whose subjects could be turned against them. There was only vast terrain, extreme distance, and enemies who could simply melt away into the steppe rather than fight a pitched battle. Cyrus's approach in the east shifted from psychological maneuvering to something more permanent: infrastructure. He is credited with founding fortified frontier settlements, most famously Cyropolis on the Jaxartes River, designed not just to conquer territory, but to hold it permanently against nomadic incursions from beyond the empire's edge. This is a subtler but crucial military insight. Some enemies simply cannot be defeated in a single decisive battle. Steppe warfare rewarded patience, permanent garrisons, and a network of fortified strongpoints, rather than one grand campaign. A strategy that Rome, centuries later, would study and largely replicate along its own contested frontiers in Germania and North Africa. By 539 BC, only one prize remained that could rival Lydia in wealth and prestige: Babylon, one of the largest and most heavily fortified cities in the ancient world. Its walls were the stuff of legend, thick enough, according to some ancient writers, for a chariot to turn around on top of them. Its king, Nabonidus, was deeply unpopular at home, having spent years focused on controversial religious reforms rather than the defense of his capital. Cyrus, once again, chose not to fight Babylon's greatest strength head-on. He targeted its weaknesses instead, one physical, one political. According to Herodotus, Cyrus's engineers diverted the Euphrates River, which flowed directly beneath Babylon's walls, into a nearby marsh basin, lowering the water level enough for Persian soldiers to wade along the riverbed itself and enter the city from underneath its fortifications, bypassing the legendary walls entirely. Just as important as the river diversion was what came before it. For years, Cyrus had positioned himself as a liberator rather than a conqueror, promising to restore temples and local religious practices that Nabonidus's reforms had disrupted, and pledging to respect Babylonian customs rather than erase them. Babylonian priesthoods and much of the general population had little appetite left to defend a king they already resented. The result, according to surviving accounts, was that Babylon fell with minimal resistance, and Cyrus entered the city to what one surviving text, the Cyrus Cylinder, frames as a welcome rather than a conquest.
The cylinder, now held in the British Museum, records policies of religious tolerance and the return of displaced peoples, including, according to later biblical tradition, the Jewish exiles of Babylon. Whatever the mix of genuine policy and political messaging behind it, it remains one of the earliest surviving examples of a conqueror explicitly renouncing terror as a tool of rule.
No military system stays undefeated forever, and Cyrus's tactical brilliance had a final, fatal blind spot. Around 530 BC, near the end of his life, Cyrus campaigned against the Massagetae, a nomadic steppe people east of the Caspian Sea, ruled by Queen Tomyris. Here, the same trick that had worked so well against settled kingdoms, luring an enemy into a false sense of security, was turned back against him. Herodotus records that Cyrus left behind a camp deliberately stocked with wine and food, expecting the Massagetae to gorge themselves before a planned Persian ambush. Initially, it worked. A portion of Tomyris's forces, including her own son, were caught off guard. But Tomyris regrouped the remainder of her army, and in the battle that followed, Cyrus himself was killed, one of the only major defeats of his entire career, and his last. It's a strikingly human end for a man who had, until then, seemed almost impossible to outmaneuver. But even in defeat,
Cyrus's military legacy was already secured. His son Cambyses II, and later his successor Darius I, would inherit not just territory, but a doctrine, adaptability over brute force, reputation as a weapon in its own right, and infrastructure as the true measure of a lasting conquest, a template the Achaemenid Empire would run on for the next 2 centuries.
Alexander the Great would visit this tomb nearly 2 centuries later and reportedly ordered it restored out of respect for the man buried inside. Centuries after that, empires from Rome to the modern era would study Cyrus's campaigns, not for his numbers or his weapons, but for the way he thought. He rarely won by being the strongest force on the field. He won by making sure the field was already tilted in his favor before the first sword was ever drawn. That, more than any single battle, may be Cyrus the Great's real military legacy.